Thank you very much, Mitra, for that introduction, and thank you very much to all the distinguished guests here to really invite me and Equinor to present an address here. If it's okay with everyone, I would like to share a small presentation, and I'm just starting to share my screen. So just give me a thumbs up when you can see the slides. Can you see the screen? I can see it on my side.
Yes, we can see. Yes, we can see.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Uh, Give me 1 second. Can you? Okay, there's something wrong on my side itself, I think now. Can you see it?
Yeah, we see it, but not on the presentation mode.
Now?
Yes.
Okay, excellent. So I will just go over here. Okay. Okay, so I just want to talk first about the company. We are fairly new in India. We come out of Norway. We are a company of about 20,000 committed colleagues working in different aspects of energy, upstream, midstream, downstream, refining, and recently into offshore wind, solar, and other things for quite a long time, inception since 1972, and present in about 30 countries. We actually just opened up our first country office in India in 2019, so less than 2 years ago now. And RK sir was very much there at our inauguration, so he's very familiar with Equinor's presence in India as well. In line with our purpose, we have already started supplying the Indian market with some of the lowest carbon intensity oil and gas barrels, and also LPG to supplement the growth that we have seen in the LPG sector, especially to the success of the Pradhan Mantri Ujjwala Yojana. I will move on to the energy perspectives, and what Mr. Amarnath said here was very interesting. What he said was we need to be in the rebalance mode essentially, according to Equinor's energy perspectives. We need to work together. We can't work in isolation. We have to work in a very coordinated fashion, not just in a domestic setting, but also in an international setting. And we also need to keep all the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals in mind in order for us to get to the 2-degree scenario by 2050. But what we are actually seeing in a real world is the scenarios on the left, reform and rivalry is what Equinor likes to call them, where economic growth is largely prioritized. Technology is driving, in a way, investments and commitments, and the policy momentum is a bit fragmented when it comes to all the nations working on it together. And especially the rivalry scenario came out more explicitly during the COVID-19 pandemic times, with things like vaccine nationalism, trade tensions, geopolitical uncertainty and tensions coming through. So in the real world, we believe that rebalance is where the world needs to be, but reform and rivalry is actually where the world truly is. If we have to really understand what it takes to get to net zero, and quite a few things have been already said, but there are really three pillars: decarbonization, energy efficiency, and electrification. But it is very, very important to understand that we cannot, as an industry, as an investor, or even as a stakeholder group, take an extreme view on any of the pillars of net zero. Oil and gas, in our view, will continue to play an extremely strong role in getting the world towards net zero. And the role of electrification, of course, cannot be undermined. So the role of gas, role of electrification, and role of oil is extremely, extremely important. They are not mutually exclusive, but they have to be working all together. If we compare Equinor's rebalance perspective, which is a fairly conservative perspective, together with the IEA estimate, We are slightly more bullish about the growth demand of oil and gas coming down, not necessarily as radically, but slowly and subtly over the next 10 to 20 to 30 years. As you can see here, we also show that gas, the role of gas is a bit undermined in so many different ways in the role of energy transition. And the reason is quite simple, actually. 80% of the energy systems as of today are molecules driven, whereas 20% are electrons driven. And in that context, gas becomes an interesting bridge fuel because it presents an opportunity to be also decarbonized and used as blue hydrogen if we can commercialize the CCS technology, which Equinor as a company, together with our partners Total and Shell, is demonstrating in the North Sea in Norway under the project called as Northern Lights. Electrification has been growing and will continue to grow, but a large portion of the increased demand in the electrification sector needs to be driven by renewables. And what we have seen in India is truly remarkable, from near zero to 100 plus gigawatts in less than 5 to 7 years, and a massive target of 450 gigawatts by 2030. So I think these are the kind of policy levers that will really push towards net zero. I also want to pause here and say that the choice of energy system that our country, India, will actually take will be extremely, extremely important. So that's why it's important to have a cohesive policy on oil, gas, renewables, energy storage, green as well as blue hydrogen in time to come. Hydrogen was probably one of the most talked about words in the energy sector in 2021. And yes, we do expect the growth to come over the next 5 to 10 years, especially in sectors which are hard to decarbonize. But more importantly, Equinor's view at least is that it's very difficult to leapfrog directly to green hydrogen, mainly because of thermodynamic efficiencies and economies of scale. So if we can start creating demand centers for hydrogen over the next 10 to 20 years in hard to decarbonize sectors, and the initial supply of which can be fueled by blue hydrogen, which is, as you all know, produced by steam reforming of natural gas together with CCS, that would be how we see the future in the next 10 to 20 years to come. But as you can see here, we truly believe that the future of a decarbonized hydrogen supply system has to be dominated by green. A lot of the dispatchable power has to come from green hydrogen eventually. And CCS is also an extremely important enabler, not just for the energy sector, but also for the industrial sector, where there are non-energy associated CO2 emissions, where there is an intent from the industry to capture the carbon, but there are no real mechanisms to sequester it or utilize it in a meaningful way. So large-scale CCS projects as well as CCUS projects are going to be extremely important in time to come. Now the $1 million or the $1 billion or even the $1 trillion question of what does it really mean for the oil and gas demand? And if we have to take three of the Equinor scenario, even in the most conservative scenario, we believe that there's a cumulative supply gap of more than 250 billion barrels of oil that will emerge between now and the next 30 years if new fields are not developed. So there is a clear need for exploring and producing from new fields. But it's important to realize that in a world where we are today and where we want to go, we do so in applying the best-in-class digital technologies, in also making sure that we are producing with the lowest amount of CO2 intensity per barrel of oil and gas that we produce. And even on the gas side, depends on how dominant the blue hydrogen sector will or will not be. But clearly for the next 10 years, there is a huge supply gap, and over the next 20 to 30 years, there is going to be a tremendous supply gap that is likely to come. So, will we get it correct as an industry? I would say most likely not. This is an interesting graph or curve that I show here, where Equinor forecasted in the first energy perspectives in 2011 and what the 2019 reality was. And as you can see, there was a substantial deviation in terms of both oil and gas energy demand as well as renewables. So we over forecasted something and we under forecasted something, and that's quite natural because we live in a very dynamic world where change is constant and growth is inevitable. So how do these balance each other? We will really not know. But there is one thing that we all have a consensus on, and that decarbonization is clearly the need of the hour. And the few things that will really survive is resilience, competence, capabilities, and leadership of our industry to envision and transform what can be to what is, which is going from a carbon world to a no carbon or a low carbon world. That will definitely stay. But it's important to remember it's a journey and we can't leapfrog there directly from one step to the next, as Mr. Amarnath ji also pointed out. And in that quest, I just want to share a brief history of Equinor on how we have taken on that journey. We started as a company in 1972 as a state oil company called Statoil, internationalized and publicly listed back in 2007, still majority owned by the Norwegian state. And then we transformed ourselves from being a oil and gas company to a broad energy company in 2018 and call ourselves Equinor. But throughout this journey, we have, as a company, made some extremely tough decisions. Starting from divesting from our fuel and retail segment, even substantial divestments from our unconventionals, shale oil and gas segment, mainly because of its extremely high carbon intensity. And we have also made some high capex decisions to make some of the digital transformations in the oil and gas space possible. And one of the two of the examples that I show here is the Oseberg platform, which is a fully automated offshore platform that went live in 2019. And to everybody's amazement, the platform doesn't have quarters, it doesn't even have toilets. So you can imagine the level of automation that is possible in our industry as well. And then, of course, Johan Sverdrup platform, which is a fully electrified platform from onshore with hydropower primarily, with a carbon intensity of 0.6 kilogram per barrel of oil equivalent produced. It went online in 2019 and phase 2 this year. And we never thought, I'm sure, as a company in 1975 or 72, when the company was established and the Mongstad refinery was established, that we will be taking on offshore projects such as offshore wind or onshore renewables also, which we are into now. So change is the constant and it is a journey, and we have to eventually transform ourselves from being a carbon producer or a product that produces carbon to a responsible company and responsible industry where we offer our customers also a solution and means for a low carbon energy solution and a means for sequestering the carbon. The project Northern Lights that I talked about, we have a render of the facility shown here. This will construction is in progress and this will go operational in 2024. So it's not either or. We all have to work on it together, and all the technologies have a role to play. It's just a question of finding the right fit in the right time at the right place. And once again, I really want to thank everyone for having me here. And it's been an absolute pleasure and truly an honor to be here.